We kept to ourselves in those days, and there was really no gay community initially. As it turned out, a couple of friends, people we didn't know, who decided that they were going to get together for a picnic. Just a couple of gay friends get together at a local park, have a picnic, and then float, on a river. There's sort of a river that went through town. They were going to float down the river and, get in their cars and go home. Well, somehow or other, somebody from some church had heard about this group having a picnic or saw something that went out probably on the early internet. And these poor folks, there were maybe a dozen of them, or, less than a dozen of them, trying to have a picnic at a picnic table at a park. And the next thing you know, this whole church group shows up and starts, with placards to, protest these gay people in the town, please, save our children and all the rest of it. And it gets kind of ugly. And these people, the gay people decide, well, screw this. We're going to go and float down the river. So they get in their inner tubes and their rafts, and they start floating down the river. And the folks from the church are following them down the river, screaming, repent and all this stuff. Well, it ends up on the local radio station hears about it. The local news does. And so there's a camera crew down there, taking pictures, and word gets out on the local radio that there's this, altercation going down on the river. And so people start calling in and they start pledging money for the group of gays and lesbians floating around. They're like, for every hour that these, church groups are harassing these poor people, I'll donate, X number of dollars. Another one of the churches, I think, a more liberal church in the town, offered their basement space. We have space for this, gay and lesbian group, feel free anytime. And so after about, 4 hours, the group walked away with several $1,000s in pledges and a church that had promised to have space for them. And so that was how the gay community in the town where we lived actually got created. And it was sort of a fluke. And after that point, that's actually how we started to meet some people, was through that whole, it ended up in the newspaper, and that's how I connected with some of the people down there. For every action, there's always a karmic reaction. For every force in one direction, there's always an opposing force in a different direction. And that's even true today, We push one way, and then all of a sudden it turns out we'll get pushed back. Or people start attacking us, and the next thing you know, people turn around and start defending us. You pay your dues, and all of the unbelievable ugliness that came with HIV/AIDS, it wasn't that they disliked us. They hated us, and they wanted us to die. A lot of people who were Christian at the time felt it was God's justice, and justice had to be served. So it was an ugly, ugly time. And I think to some extent, that ugliness had an opposite effect in the end, where you can only sustain that for so long before love comes through. And people started to recognize, out of all of this ugliness of couples that are just trying to survive through the AIDS crisis, and make a living to be together, that was all they really wanted. And that ultimately, in the end, allowed society to kind of recognize that, allowing these people to marry is probably not going to ruin us. It's going to be fine. And I think that's ultimately what public consensus came about to be.